Hey, brother, it is Military Day, I think.
It is. We've already had one, and now we get it not only another, but a great return guest in front of the show.
I
And
know it
in
is
front of us, too.
great guest, great friend of the show, just great personal guest. And I love when we meet folks. You know, everybody we have are great people, right? But God, I just love becoming friends with people that you never met, and all of a sudden you do these sort of things, and one networking leads to another, and all of a sudden you just gotta. You know, we're just literally talking about getting together for some waterside dinner in a couple of weeks. You know, I just love that. It's great stuff.
It is great stuff. And, this awesome guest of ours today, Oak, not only is he a great guy, but, my daughter was talking about him less than a week ago. She said, remember when Oak come and saw us at the convention? I said, do I remember it? I said, it was awesome, but that's just the kind of guy Oak is. I couldn't get to his speech, so he come to me, and I got to tell you, just just gem of a man.
A gem of a man. And so for anybody that's silly enough to have not caught it before, you're in for a treat. Lieutenant Colonel retired U.S. Army 1st Cav Oak McCulloch. Let's just go get Oak.
Let's just go get him.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right. Hey, brother, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for you and Wes having me back on the show. And just what you were talking about, it's so nice to get to finally meet people once you've been on their show or connect with them on LinkedIn. And luckily enough, I've gotten to meet both you and Wes in person.
Exactly. It's good stuff. And what's really interesting is I saw you 3 times, I think. I saw you at Gary Bontrager and Ray Gage's event in Columbus a couple of years ago now. Right. And haven't I come up and we've had dinner and twice, and we're going to do it again soon here, I think. And you keep seeing me. That's what's amazing. Most people after one time is enough. They're always busy. I don't know what that is.
They run away.
Yeah, exactly. I keep texting, say I'm going to be in the area, and I get a text 3 weeks later saying, I missed your text. I'm sorry, Randy.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You're welcome anytime. I love spending time with you.
Well,
and like we got to get Wes so that all 3 of us are together at the same time.
We got it. We'll figure that out sometime or another. That'd be good times, man. Yeah. Wherever we are might never be the same, but that's okay. The world's always evolving. So, well, it's great to have you back. I wanted to have you back on, and I had many times. I have an ulterior motive of a direction I want to take with a guest. I don't really have one with you because you're just such a great guy, and I just love chatting with you. So, first, for anybody that didn't maybe catch the first time you was on, give us a little bit of the background about your career and where you come from, and how you got to the point that you're speaking at keynote addresses internationally, and writing books and leading seminars, and just doing some big stuff.
Yeah, well, thank you, Randy. So I like you, I'm a Midwest boy. I grew up in Northern Illinois, and small little farm town, 1,200 people, Kirkland, Illinois. Great place to grow up, and played baseball, basketball, football in high school, went off to the United States Military Academy. Didn't graduate from there, but I was there for about 2 years. Played baseball there. Then I came home and I finished up in ROTC, and that's where I met my wife. She was in Army ROTC because she was an Army nurse for 8 years, and that was 38 years ago, so I think that one worked out okay.
Yeah, you didn't mess that up too bad, did you?
No, I as much as I've tried over the years, she's put up with me. I am trainable, as she says.
Really.
So graduated from college, got my commission, did my first 5 years as an infantry officer, did my last 18 years as an armored cav officer, did a lot of teaching when I wasn't in a deployable unit. Deployed to Desert Shield, Desert Storm, did a support operation to Bosnia, did a peacekeeping operation in Kosovo. But when I wasn't in a deployable unit, I would spend a lot of time in the schoolhouse teaching, which kind of led me to where I am. But that and my last assignment on active duty, I ran an Army ROTC program where I was helping to commission the next generation of leaders, not only for the Army, but for the nation. And I started talking about leadership and what it takes to be a good leader. And so I came up with that talk, and eventually that turned into my book. And now I've got 4 keynote talks that I give. And sometimes I go to a conference, like I was just in a conference 2 weeks ago in Springfield, Massachusetts. And I spoke 3 times in 2 days. I talked about leadership. I talked about building effective and efficient teams. And I talked about success, how, ways to help yourself be more successful. And that's really my passion at this point. I live here in Daytona Beach, Florida. I have my yacht, my 17-foot John boat with a 40 horsepower engine that I love to fish. So I go back in the mangroves and back in the creeks and I fish. And my fishing buddy said to me, he said it several times, but he keeps bringing up, Oak, what are you doing? Why are you flying all over the world talking? Why don't you just fish every day? And I said, I can't. I look at it as my responsibility to pass on some of these lessons that I've learned over the last 40 years of being a leader to this next generation of leaders. Because if we don't do it, you and I and Wes and the other people who understand this leadership thing, then who's going to do it?
Right. Good point. And it's great that you're willing to do that, because a lot of folks that's gave as much as you've gave to your country would say, you know what, I've done enough. I'm just gonna, like you said, go fish and have a pint of my local favorite at Boondocks and call it a day, right? But but that's also why you rose to the ranks that you rose in the Army, is because there's you have that, I want to give more, I want to do more, I want to lead. And you lead by example, because we've talked about that in the past, both together and on the podcast before. You're one of those, I can tell just with being around you and listening to you speak. You're one of those leaders that truly leads from the front, right? You lead your men and women. You don't just give them orders and tell them what to do and say go perform. Am I pretty accurate with that? Because I think I am.
Yeah, you are. I mean, I've had my hand in commissioning over 600 lieutenants for the Army over my career. And I used to tell every one of them, and I've got a little card that has my 10 rules for young leaders, especially, but any leader. And one of the first rules on there is get out from behind your desk. Nobody wants to follow somebody who's trying to lead from behind their desk. Get out there with your people, wherever they are, be there. Ask them questions, talk to them, get to know them. That's a huge part of being a leader. And, you need to get to know the people that you have a privilege to lead. And it is a privilege to be the leader. And unfortunately, I think too many leaders in this world today, in every profession, have forgotten that it is a privilege to be the leader, not a right or their, it is a privilege to be selected to be the leader of somebody, and you need to treat it that way.
That's one of my favorite sayings that I've read in your book, which is up on the screen here. I've heard you in a talk that I was privileged to attend that you gave, and then just sitting and talking together. I've heard you say that, and I think that's such a probably number one best point maybe that you've ever made, and you've made a lot of good ones. But get out in front of it, be with your people, learn your people, and let your people know you care about them, and you got their best interest at heart, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the best quotes I've ever heard that goes with that is Colin Powell said, "You can't lead people that you can't see." Get out there, be with them, and to me, that's the whole point of being a leader, is to get to know the people that you have the privilege to lead. And here's the problem if you don't get to know them. And I see it all the time, and I'm sure you have seen it in your lifetime as well. If a leader doesn't get to know the people they're leading, then lots of times what I see is they'll assign you a project when it's the worst project they could ever assign you because you have no interest in that. That's not in your wheelhouse. But maybe that's the perfect project for Wes, but they don't know that because they don't get to know you. So they're assigning projects to people that they're setting them up for failure and the organization up for failure, all because they don't take the time to get out and get to know their people.
So what I think I'm hearing, and this is interesting, as a leader, you're actually, if you need to assign projects to somebody, you need a project assigned, obviously. Is it important to want that person to have some buy-in if it's possible? Sometimes it's not, but if it's at all possible, why just order them, so to speak, to do something that they have no interest in when maybe you could assign them a project which the chances for success are going to be much greater if they're buying in, they want it, they love it, they feel it, as opposed to I'm just doing this because this lieutenant colonel,
the old man, told me to,
got all bossy and told me to go do it. Right, exactly. The old man said to go do this. Right. So that I think is a novel concept for leaders. Is it not?
Well, I think there's very few leaders are approaching leadership that way anymore. Yeah. And, you know, and it's not always possible, like you said. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you want to help somebody grow a little bit. So you assign them a project that might be outside their comfort zone, but you do that consciously. You make a conscious decision to do that. It isn't just that I assigned you something and it's not the right assignment for you. And I think if we had more leaders who got to know their people, I think you would find that you will get the buy-in and that look, anybody who wants to do what you're asking them to do is going to do a better job than somebody you tell them to. And, you know, I think part of the problem is that, again, I think many leaders today think that they're so tied to this computer and their phone, and that they sit behind their desk. And, I know you've heard me say this before. I don't know that your audience has, but, you know, I worked for a guy who ended up a 3-star general, and he said, "Oh, never, ever, ever turn down a chance to go get your own cup of coffee." He said 2 things happen when you do that. He said, number one, you build trust with your people. You show them that you're no better than they are. You got to go get your own cup of coffee just like they do. And he said, and number 2, if you're lucky, you got 2 or 3 different ways to get to the coffee pot and back to your office, and you stop along the way and you talk to people and you find out things about them. And I always told everybody that I had the opportunity to tell, you know, your number one goal every day should be to go out and find one person in your organization and find out one new thing about that person, not about work, about their personal life. What's their spouse's name? What's their kid's name? What sports do their kids play? What's their habits? What do they like? What don't they like? Get to know those kinds of things. Now, here's the key to that. If you're going to ask them that question and you want them to answer that, you got to be willing to answer those questions. And, you know, I got it. You got to keep that leader-led relationship, but that doesn't mean you can't get to know people. Right. You can still keep that leader-led relationship and still get to know the people that work for you.
That's a great point. You know, and that kind of channels in a little bit with another statement that I love that you've made. And if I'm correct, I think you used to make it maybe to second lieutenants, and I might be wrong on that. You know, go celebrate. And I'm paraphrasing, but go celebrate. Throw your hat in the air, drink a beer or 2, because this is the last time it's all about you. Now that's close, right? But give me the better version of that, the Oak version.
Yeah, that's right, spot on, Randy. I used to tell them, look, leadership is not about you, and yet it's all about you. You know, it's not about the title you get or the privileges you get or that you're going to get better pay and live in a nicer house and drive a nicer car. Leaders get those things, okay? And that's okay, as long as that's not the only reason you want to be the leader. If that's the only reason you want to be the leader, then please go do something else, because you're not going to be a good one. It's all about you and how you treat and empower the people and the organizations you have a privilege to lead. And I used to tell them all the time, I said, like you said, the day they got commissioned, celebrate today, because today is all about you. But remember, once we pin those bars on your shoulder, tomorrow morning when you wake up, it will never be about you ever again. It's about your people, the organization, the job that has to get done. And then if we might talk about you, maybe
Right.
at that point, maybe.
That's awesome. I always loved that one. So talk about your book. Wes has got it up on the screen. It's I will say, and I can say this in honesty, I air quote read every book anybody ever sends me. And when I do the air quotes, because I may semi-skim some books, just because I have a lot going on. But I never have somebody on talk about their book and have never gave it a decent perusal, if that's fair, right? Because that's being on what's the word I want? That's just not being ethical in my mind to act like I know about the book and then didn't read it. But I've read yours 2 times, and I think I started the third and then I got off into other directions. But incredibly good book, so well written. Tell me about the book. What are people going to get from the book? What was behind the reason and what you put in the book? Just give us the longer Amazon version of your book.
Yeah. So there is no discussion of theory in this book. I don't even think I mentioned the word theory in the book. At least I hope I don't. Because look, theory is important, but that's not what this book is about. This book is about everyday things that every leader can do to help them improve their leadership skills and ability and empower the people they have the privilege to lead to be not only better workers, but better people. And I think that's part of the leader's job, is to help people reach their potential, be the best version of themselves. And good leaders do that, I think. And at least the good leaders that I have had have helped me to do that. And that's the people that I kind of tried to follow in their footsteps, in their leadership style. And so that's what this book is about. You know, we talk about selfless service. We talk about communication skills, which is huge. You know, I tell everybody, look, the number one thing that's going to determine whether or not your organization can be successful or not is the quality of leadership in your organization. The number 2 thing, hands down, is the quality of communication in your organization. If those 2 things aren't at their top, you got problems. And I see lots of organizations that have problems. So I talk about selfless service. I talk about communication. I talk about problem solving, making decisions, leading through change. You know, everyday things that you got to go through as a leader. And I've had people, and made me feel pretty good, I got to say. I've had people who said that, you know, and I've seen it. I'd hop on a Zoom with them and they've highlighted it and tabbed it. And they said they keep it on their desk and they use it like almost like a workbook. And when they come up against something that's in my book, they'll pull it out and they'll reread that little chapter or a couple paragraphs of it. And they put it to use, because that's why I wrote it. And that's why I wrote it the way I did. And especially, you know, this was important to me. At the end of every chapter, I've got like the key notes that you need to pull out of that chapter. And then I also added like a reflection piece so that you can ask yourself the question that I put down there. How are you doing in this area? Is there something you can do better? Because we all can. I don't care who you are. You know, we none of us are perfect. We are all going to make mistakes. We're all going to screw some things up. But that's how you figure out how to get better at it next time. And even if you were successful, even if you are very good at something, doesn't mean you can't get better at it. I mean, those 2 things are not mutually exclusive.
Right. Hey friends, it's Randy here, the owner of Source One Marketing, ibuyfromrandy.com. And I got to tell you, we are proud to sponsor the Building Wins Live podcast and vlogcast. We have 4+ decades in this beautiful industry of supplying materials, supplying services, supplying marketing assistance, and we just are proud to sponsor Building Wins Live and some great guests that we have every single week, many of them from our beloved industry and many of them from outside the industry that still bring some incredible content. So make sure to check us out at ibuyfromrandy.com and let us know what you think about this show. For now, thanks for checking this out. Let's get back to the show. So you, I forget, I should know this, but when did you write the book, Oak?
So so I started writing it, and interesting story. I knew I always wanted to write the book. Always, I've wanted to write it for years, and I kept putting it off and putting it off. And then one day, my wife and I and her mom and two other ladies who live in the condo that we live in here, we went to a motivational / how do we revitalize the Catholic Church talk at our church. And the guy that was speaking there did a great job. And it was a 3-hour long event. And he spoke for about 45 minutes. Then he'd take a 15-minute break, and then he'd speak again and take a 15-minute break and speak again. And every time he went on break, I went up and I picked his brain because he was doing what I wanted to do. He was out there talking about leadership and motivation and success and all those things that I wanted to talk about. And so I picked his brain, and he gave me some great ideas and some great things that I still use today. And then at the very end, when he was done, I walked up and I thanked him, for taking the time to pass some things on to me. And he said, thank you. And he turned around and started to walk away. And then he stopped and he turned around and he said, Oak, have you written a book? And I said, no. I said, but I'm thinking about it. And he said, stop thinking about it and write it. And that was the 15th of February, 2020. I went home that night. I wrote out the table of contents. So I started writing it on the 16th of February, 2020, and I published it on the 12th of February, 2021. So little under a year from the time I started till the time I got it published.
Nice. It's and so we don't forget to do this. How's the book available? We'll come back to a couple other things, but how do people get their hands on it? Which they need to do.
Yeah, so it's on Amazon, and it's available in hardcover, paperback, ebook, and Audible. And I did the reading on the Audible. The only other voice on the Audible is my wife, my boss, and she read the forward because she wrote the forward for it, and she read the about the author, like kind of a short bio of me, and then but all the rest of it was me. It's me speaking.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think audiobooks read by the author have a lot more impact, especially in this kind of book.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And because I had the paperback and the hardcover and the ebook out for a while, and then Kel told me, she said, you need to do an audio version of your book, and I was reluctant to do it, but I said, okay, I'll do it. And I went to a local studio here in Daytona, which unfortunately now is closed, but and I'm talking to the owner and a young man in there, and they loved the idea of doing the book, and he said, so who's going to read it? And I said, well, I was hoping that you would. And the owner said, well, I can. He said, but I can tell you right now, or the young man said, well, I can tell you right now that when I'm looking for audio books, if it is not read by the author, I skip right over it.
Well, that makes sense.
You're working on the audio version of your book, aren't you?
Well, I'm just finishing up the written version. Why I say finishing up, the manuscript is done. It's an M word, The manuscript is done. It's been edited. We're now actually, thank you for asking. We're in that fun part now. I met with my formatters and my editor yesterday via Teams, Zoom, whatever it was, and we're picking out covers, design. So my goal is to have the soft cover and the ebook before October 1st. So
good.
We're getting there, and then I'm going to do an audio. I'm going to do a hardcover as well eventually, shortly after, and I'm going to do an audio. I will do it, and I'm going to read it myself. I like the idea that what you said, though, of the forward and the bio, maybe by somebody else. So it maybe comes off slightly. I like that because to me that might be slightly braggadocious if you're reading your own, forward or your own bio, right? Somebody else is reading it. But,
I agree.
But
it worked out great. One, because she wrote the forward, but also because it's just somebody else on there besides just you,
right.
And and even my audiobook is only, with everything, is like 3 hours and 45 minutes. So I mean, it's not like it's one of those 1,000-page.
Right. How many settings did it take? Just curious, not that this matters to anybody that's listening probably, but how many hours did it take in the studio? Did you over several days?
8 hours.
Or 8 hours.
8 hours. Now I didn't sit for 8 hours. I went like for 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, and part of those other 2 hours were the edits. We'd go over. I did the 2 hours. The first part of the next 2 hours, we went over that and kind of fixed some mistakes and some voiceover type stuff, and then we get into the next couple chapters. But it took me 8 hours for a 3 hour and 45-minute book.
Okay. I think the young guy that was spot on, right? If the author doesn't read it themselves, especially in a nonfiction, fiction, it probably doesn't matter, right? I mean, Tom Clancy, I don't think is with us anymore, if I'm not mistaken, but he doesn't need to read his book, right? I mean, because it's a novel, it doesn't matter. But I think if you're going to read a nonfiction book, where somebody, like in your case, and in my case, I'm talking about sales. If I'm telling you my theory, my way of doing this, and I think you want to hear my way of doing this, and you want to hear Oak talking about leadership, right? Not somebody saying what Oak said, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where the passion comes through,
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes interesting because, I do get passionate about what I talk about,
Right.
and as you should, if you're going to talk about it, you should be passionate about it. But I think that it even comes through in the book, and it was funny because when I first sent it to my editor, and Kel did most of the editing. I mean, I'd get done with a chapter and I'd give it to her. I'd print it out and I'd give it to her, and it'd come back and it looked like she bled all over it. But she was very careful, and I made sure that the editor of the book, who eventually published it, I said, I do not want it to change, the voice of it to change.
Right.
I want people, when they're reading this book, to hear me talk. And I'm one of those that I only speak English, and some would say not very well. But when you hear me talk, that's what I wanted in that book. I wanted it to be just like I was talking to you. And I think he and Kel did a really good job of keeping it in my voice.
Well, I can tell you zero doubt, because if I remember the timeline, Oak, I think I ordered your book, and we might have communicated via text and DM or whatever. I feel like I read your book or part of your book at least prior to us ever talking in person, and you did you nailed it spot on, because you're right. I heard. I could think back of reading the book, and I heard your voice in it. So that's spot on, and well done with that. And I think that's what the important part with that, especially with a nonfiction, is as you just hit on. A paid professional are good. That's what they do, but they still don't understand the areas. And you might spend a bunch of time saying, "This is really important right here. I'm really passionate about," but they're never going to be able to live the same passion of that line that you are, right? They're just never going to be able to do it. They could probably do good, 80% there if they're really good, probably, but not 100%, right? So I love it. Yeah. It's good stuff. I'll have to listen to it. I haven't done that. I'll listen to it. What I really should do is get it and listen to it on my ride up to see you in a couple, 3 weeks, if that works out.
But
the only problem is that
about how long it would take.
Yeah, it would be. The only problem is if I do that, by the time I get there, I may not want to talk to you anymore because I've heard enough of your voice.
That's very likely.
Yeah, I somehow doubt that. So, what's? I know you've been doing a lot of speaking around the country and the world. You end up with a lot of like police officers, sheriffs,
first
responders, right? Yeah. Is that because of I want to call it, this might not be the right term, but the semi-paramedic or military-ish stance that these guys have?
I think my military background gets my foot in the door with a lot of the first responder, because they understand the selfless service. They understand, putting your life on the line on a daily basis. So that at least gets my foot in the door. But, lately I've been doing a lot of construction type conferences and events. And somebody explained that to me the other day. And because I was wondering why. And somebody said, it's because a lot of veterans go into the construction trade. Okay. So you're a good fit for that area. Like I spoke in San Antonio, Texas in January for the Independent Electrical Contractors Association. And they just contacted me about 3 weeks ago, and I just signed the contract last week to come back in October. I'm going to do that was a regional conference. I'm going to do the national conference in Phoenix in September. So, I do some construction, but I've done a fiduciary association, HR association, healthcare risk management. And then, the Max Growth Conference, I consider that a construction type conference, because most of the people there were roofers or did something along that line. So people ask me all the time, so who's your audience? And I said, anybody who is or aspires to be a leader, that's my audience.
Yeah, that's a great audience. And like I said, I really enjoyed we've talked before, but I really enjoyed seeing you live and in action in Columbus at Gary and Ray's event. That was good stuff. So
that was a great conference. I still stay in contact with a few of those people that came up and spoke with me afterwards. Good. And that's one of my favorite parts about the conference is, going and speaking at a conference is, one, questions and answers. And number two, the way I look at it is, and what I tell people that hire me to come talk, look, from the minute I walk into the hotel to the minute I walk out to go back to the airport, you own me. Mm-hmm. I'm there. I want to be at the social events. I want to be at the dinners. I want to, during the conference when I'm not talking, I'm going to be in the hallway answering questions, sitting in breakout sessions, like I did there in Columbus. And then during the breaks, I want people to come up and talk to me.
Sure.
Because you know as well as I do, some people just won't stand up and ask a question in front of everybody else. Unfortunately, because that question they asked, probably 10 other people had that same question.
Yeah.
But that's just human nature. Some people just aren't going to do it, but they'll come up to me after, during a break or whatever, and they'll ask that question. And I love spending time with them and getting to know them. And generally from, after every conference, I have 10 or 15 people that I'm connected with now on LinkedIn who we send messages back and forth and start to build a relationship with.
That's good stuff. So as we sort of wind down, because you've been very kind with your time, what's next for outside of all kinds of events that you've told me you've got coming up? But what else is next in the life of Oak and Kel?
Yeah, well, she spends a lot of time with her mom, helping her, and we spend a lot of time at the church. Do a lot of things for our Catholic church. Try never to turn down opportunities to work there and help people. But I'm going to go up and see my mom, who lives in the Knoxville area. I'm going to go see her next month for a couple of days, and then I'm just doing a lot of speaking engagements. I'm still working on my second book. I'm so busy right now with podcasts and Zoom meetings, and speaking engagements, and it's hard to just sit down and spend some time. I'm redoing my website, my sizzle reel, my media kit, all those kinds of things. So time, there's, as I tell people, there's only so many hours in a day. I am the expert at trying to shove 36 hours in a 24-hour day. Doesn't work.
Don't work.
They're only 24. I don't care how hard.
No matter what you do. That's awesome.
So I'm trying to stay busy, and but I do want to get this second book. I really want to get it out there.
Well, so whatever amount you feel comfortable with teasing us on that, Tell me about the second book that'd be a great way to end this, because that leaves that great segue into you coming back when the book's done.
That's right. So it's the second keynote talk that I give, that most people want my leadership talk, but lots of times I will give my leadership talk and my success talk. And I the title of it is Arm Yourself for Success. And again, it's not about theories. There's no magic in there. It's about everyday things that you can do to help improve your opportunities to be successful. Anybody who tells you you do these 15 things, I guarantee you'll be successful. Run away from that person, because they're trying to sell you something. There are no guarantees. But if you do the things that I talk about in my talk that will be in the book, then you will increase your opportunities of being successful. And I want to do it the same format that I did the last one. I'll talk about some things. I'll give some personal examples. I'll use some great quotes that I've collected over the years from great humans, great human beings. And then at the end of each chapter, I'll have the takeaways and the reflection piece, because I think that's important. Otherwise, you don't really get the most out of that book.
Right. When can we look for that, do you think? See, I'm putting any pressure on you now. I'm getting you to say a date.
Yeah. I am hoping to have it done by the end of the year. Again, it shouldn't take me too long, because it is a talk I give. All of the things are in my head somewhere in there. I just got to figure out how to get it on the paper and in the right order and do that. But I think it should go quick once I dedicate some time to it. And once I get done with the website and the speaker reel and the media kit, which I think I'm close. I think here in the next week or two, the new website will be out and all that. Then that'll free up some time for me to concentrate on that.
Awesome. Well, awesome. Love it. So appreciate, again, as always, I appreciate your friendship to the show, but also to me personally, you're one of the finest people I've ever met, and I enjoy our friendship, brother. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Randy. That's very kind.
You're welcome. So should ask questions. Wes loves to throw the should ask question up there. What does, in the world of Oak, do you just wish people would ask? Whether it's about your military career, whether it's about leadership, ROTC, the church, I don't care. What do you just every day go, I talk to these people for an hour and a half and they never ask me this?
Yeah, I think, how do you recharge your battery? I don't get asked that very often. And because I don't get asked it very often, I don't talk about it very much, but I'm pretty passionate about it. I am about servant leadership. It isn't about you, but you do have to take care of yourself, because, that old saying, you can't get water from an empty glass or something like that. You got to take care of yourself. You got to recharge your batteries every once in a while, and even me, I a pretty hard charger going all the time, but there's times when I start to feel the battery draining a little bit, and everybody needs to have that, whatever it is that you do to recharge that battery. And you need to think about what it is. And when you start feeling it drain, take some time to take care of yourself. For me, it's the 4 F's: faith, family, friends, and fishing. When I start feeling drained, I go to one of those 4 or multiple of those 4 to help recharge my battery. And then once it's recharged, then I can get back out there doing what I love to do, and helping to make people the best version of themselves.
And I love that. And I'm going to ask for one more minute or two, because I love that theory. But when by nature, somebody like yourself, that's a hard charger, that's a get out in front, make this thing happen, which has led you to be all that you have been all these years. You can recognize that you're hitting that burnout, but do you find it difficult? And do you have a trigger or anything that you can grasp to and say, I know I'm getting burned out. I know I need to step back for a little bit with the 4 F's, but man, I still got this and this and this, and I love what I'm doing still, and I don't want to. Is there a trigger that you have that you can instantly maybe grab onto and say, look, stop right now, just stop?
Yeah.
Is that a fair question?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely it is. And I think, again, you gotta figure that out for yourself when you're hitting that before you get to the point where there isn't any more juice in the battery, because it's a lot harder to recharge it if it's dead. But if you can recharge it when it's half full or a quarter full, much easier. And for me, it's when I feel like what I'm doing is work. When I feel like what I'm doing, I have to make myself do it. That's when I know the battery's starting to drain a little bit. Because most of the time when I'm doing stuff, it isn't work. I mean, it is what I want to do. It's my passion. It's I can do it for, I don't mind if I do it for 15, 16, 18 hours a day, but there's times when I'll figure out, I've been doing it, one day I'll be doing it for about an hour and I'll feel myself like, I don't really want to do this. Then I know it's time for me to get out and take care of myself, recharge that battery. And like I said, either one or multiple of the 4Fs I normally, and that'll recharge my battery right away.
Yeah. And recharging the battery has got to be a part of that road to success, because if you don't, like you said, it's better to recharge it at half or 2/3 empty than a dead battery is pretty hard to recharge, right?
And not only is it hard to recharge, but how much damage did you do when you weren't motivated, when you didn't have the passion, when that battery was dead? You could do a lot of damage to your organization or to your reputation or to whatever it is that you're dealing with. Once that battery goes completely dead, and I'm sure you've met them, and I've met people who have had the burnout where they burned completely out, and some of them it takes a year or two to recover from that, and get back out to where they can do the things that they were passionate about. So I think that's the danger. If you let it go to the point where you're at the bottom, it sometimes is a long road back.
So big picture, sometimes over the short term, sometimes you got to be a marathoner versus a sprinter, right? And know when to do each, right? Because life is a marathon. There's sprints and then there's time to pull back. And the key is to figure out when those are. But like you said, great place to end it is you just got to recognize it for yourself, because you're not doing yourself, you're not doing your organization, your agency, whoever it is that you're working with or for, customer, friends, whatever the case may be, any favors. If you're better off to pull back for a day or two and practice the 4Fs and come back. There's some non-negotiables. You just got to do that, right? But
yeah, absolutely.
But sometimes if you're not feeling it and you're not into it, sometimes you're going to do all of them better by just pulling back for that day or two and do one of the 4Fs and get yourself back to where you're giving them the full Oak or Wes or Randy that you expect from us, right?
That's right. That's right.
Love it.
And I used to tell people all the time, that worked for me. I said, look, I expect 100% from you every day. Now I understand today might be 70% of your normal 100%, because we all go through things in life. I mean, it's called life. There's days when bad things happen or just things happen that you may not be able to give me 100%, your full everything that you normally give me. But if you give me 100%, even if that's 70% today, then that's all I can ask from you.
Right. Love it. Good stuff. Oak, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me back, Randy. And hopefully we'll get back together here soon.
We're going to do it soon, and keep me in the loop on that book. I need to be one of the first places that introduces that. So let's do that.
That sounds great.
All right, man. Sounds good. Appreciate you, brother. Have a good day. All right. Cheers. Hi, my friends. Man, there's nothing to say, because Oak's just Oak, and he's an incredible individual, incredible leader. Buy his book. Follow him on social media. If you have speaking opportunities, I've listened to the guy not only just setting over a burger and a brewski, but I've also listened to him speak on the stage, if you will. And the guy's every bit as good as you think he is. So buy his book, check him out, follow him. And I guess other than that, just, love what you do what you love. That's what we're doing here today. Go live it, love it, own it. And as always, go make today your best day ever. Until tomorrow. Cheers, my friends.